Hi, welcome to Backos.com. We are on Lesson 3, Staccato and Legato Percussion Instruments from Percussion Guide for the Beginning Band Student. We're going to develop a classification in percussion instruments that is a little different than what we normally talk about in elementary school. We usually talk about pitched and non-pitched percussion instruments. We are going to give a classification of staccato, which means short and detached, and legato, which means long, sustained. The reason why we have to understand these two distinctions is because for staccato instruments, we have to create rolls to sustain sound. For legato instruments, we have to do the opposite many of times. We have to use muffling techniques to stop the sound of the drum or mallet instrument. This assignment that we're going to do is going to seem extremely easy, but like I told you in lesson 1, always answer the questions, because when you're answering the question, you're making a decision. So for instance, what I'm going to ask you in your assignment is just identify the different instruments. For instance, let me give you an example of some of the instruments, whether they're staccato or legato. And later on, as we get into lessons, I will talk in more detail how to sustain sound or how to muffle. We're going to use a snare drum. And what you're going to do in the band room is kind of play the different instruments. Whether it's maracas, claves, cymbals, bass drum, strike it once. And what you're going to determine if the sound continues. It's sustained. So for instance, if we use a snare drum, and I'm going to tilt this down a little bit, and we just strike it once, what's going to happen is you're going to notice that it's short and detached. So for snare drum, what we have to do to lengthen sound, we created the buzz roll. So if I'm striking, all right, let's use the triangle. As I'm holding it up and I strike it, it's sustained sound. So we're going to be using muffle techniques that you're going to learn a little bit later. How to use your last two fingers to muffle the sound when needed. Let's strike the tambourine once. Listen, it's short and detached. Label it with an S for staccato. And that's why many times we shake it to sustain sound. Or we use a traditional thumb roll to lengthen sound. By now, all of you have played on a variety of instruments in band and made those decisions whether they're legato or staccato. Make sure you write them down, and if you see any instruments that I didn't put on the list, go through and make that decision also. Thank you for joining me at nickbackos.com. This is Lesson 3, Legato and Staccato Percussion Instruments from Percussion Guide for the Beginning Band Student.